So I wanted, before we get started, to let everyone know that I have a new podcast out, and it's called Meditations. If you like the Meditations segment of this current podcast, you'll like the Meditations podcast. It's nothing but 20 minutes of meditative sounds. And now, on with the podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Caesar's Palace for 12 rounds of boxing. In the red corner, from Los Angeles, California, wearing the red trunks with the gold trim, weighing in at 125 pounds, the lightweight champion of the world, Danny Little Red Lopez. Well, Bill, our winners get a home theater receiver. That's right. Experience the full potential of high-definition video with this 72-channel digital home theater receiver from Yamaha. But wait, that's not all. They also get a 5.1-channel surround sound system from Mirage. With 5 palm-sized speakers and a compact subwoofer cube, the MX 5.1 brings you huge immersive sound with Mirage's omnipolar technology. All from the Spiegel catalog, Chicago, Illinois, 60609. And they're taking closer order as down the stretch they come. Mr. Hot Stuff has 3 lengths to make up with chocolate candy last. On the rail, take the points behind that gallant son with chocolate candy gaining on the outside. In the lead is Pioneer of the Nile being tackled by chocolate candy. They're neck and neck as they come to the wire. And Pioneer of the Nile holds off chocolate candy and wins the Santa Anita Derby. And now, on your feet, time to greet holder of 14 NBA titles, your home team, your Los Angeles Lakers. Number 3 at 6'8", 5th year out of UCLA, playing forward, Trevor Ariza. Starting at center, number 17 at 7 feet, 4th year out of St. Andrews High School, Andrew Bynum. And at guard, number 24, 6'6", 13th season out of Loyal Marion High School, Kobe Bryant.
This show is loose. I like that.
Good morning. It's Monday, Moral Monday, July the 14th, and this is The True Conservative. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today. So today, after the Serenity Prayer and the patriotic song of the day, we will have the headlines, patriotic shorts, motivation, Bishop Barron, Ayn Rand, and moral politics. All that and more when I get back. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I should not change, the courage to change the things I should, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. Thank you. And now the headlines for Monday, July the 14th. Poll. Byron Donalds emerges as early favorite for governor over Casey DeSantis. Gavin Newsom declares California a sanctuary state for child slavery. Breaking. Major flooding currently underway in Kempner, Texas. The Lampasas River has risen 33 feet in just 4 hours. Never apologize for greatness. FBI hires top-rated Italian bodyguard Luigi Clintonelli to protect Ghislaine Maxwell. Breaking. President Trump goes scorched earth on Fed Chair Jerome Powell, slamming him for spending $2.5 billion on a luxurious renovation while keeping our interest rates sky high and costing us hundreds of billions. Beijing bans Americans from owning farmland in China while exploiting our openness to advance its economic and kinetic statecraft on U.S. soil. CNN marks 1-year anniversary of Trump falling down after loud popping noises. Breaking. President Trump receives thunderous welcome at FIFA game in New Jersey. And those are the headlines for Monday, July the 14th. Thank you. And now the political corner.
Jasmine Crockett, the most unprofessional U.S. representative in Congress by far. So this ghetto caricature that she and the Democratic Party made up, it's quite fascinating to watch unravel. If you look up Jasmine Crockett prior to being in Congress, entirely different person. She had a different accent. She was calm, collected, respectful, professional. The struggle that Jasmine Crockett is portraying, as if she grew up in the hood, grew up on the streets, I don't see it. She grew up quite privileged, actually. So she attended Mary Institute and St. Louis Country Day School. This private prep school cost $35,000 a year to attend, mind you. She also attended Rosati Kane, an all-girls Catholic high school, which cost $14,000 a year to attend. Jasmine Crockett then went on to attend Rhodes College, a private liberal arts college costing $73,000 a year to attend. She was raised by her father, a pastor, and her mother, a stay-at-home mom. Jasmine Crockett has a law degree and she owns her own law firm. And with her net worth, she's making pretty good money. Now, these are all great things, but my point is that I don't see the struggle. I don't see the ghetto accent coming into play. I don't see her struggling. Like, this is identity politics and pandering at its finest. Now, thankfully, this time around, the Democrats didn't even vote for her. Jasmine Crockett came in last place in 2 elections within the House of Representatives. Because, newsflash, being the loudest person in the room doesn't make you right. Anyway, the Democratic Party, their plan with Jasmine Crockett did not work, thankfully, and hopefully she's not in there anymore.
And that was the political corner. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, the patriotic short.
Why did American soldiers examine the mouths and armpits of captured Germans? After the end of World War II, a huge number of Nazis fled Germany, settling all over Europe, the United States, and South America to escape justice. The fact is that even before the outbreak of war in 1935, the chief SS Dr. Gravitz and Reichsfuhrer SS Himmler made a proposal to introduce for employees of this structure and all its departments, which included the Gestapo, a mandatory tattoo indicating the blood type. First, it helped in case of a soldier's wounding to determine as quickly as possible what kind of blood was needed for transfusion. Secondly, soldiers with such tattoos were to be served first. The tattoo did not have to be very noticeable, but at the same time it was easy to spot if necessary. Initially, it was decided to put the tattoo on the inner side of the left shoulder, above the elbow, but with the beginning of hostilities, it became clear that the soldier who lost his hands was deprived of the branding, and therefore it began to be written in the axilla.
And that was the patriotic short. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, motivation.
Fixing to get something most people aren't going to get. I don't have that natural beauty or that natural talent or this gift for creativity or intellect or humor. I don't have any of those things. But what I got is I will outwork you. When it's 45 on the treadmill, I do 46. When it's supposed to be 20 phone calls, I make 21. When it's supposed to be an 8-hour workday, I work 9. Whatever it is, I always do one more. And what that does is it makes me eventually think I'm doing things other people aren't willing to do, so I should get things other people aren't going to get.
You've got to understand, it's not about what you were born with. It's not about what you were given, where you started, or even where you're going. It is entirely about what you plant at the center of your soul, how hard you're willing to go after something, how much focus you're willing to put in your life, and how often you come back to that level of intensity for who you want to be.
You have to make a decision that nobody in your position will outwork you.
Some people run faster, swim better, but mentality is mentality. You're not going to outwork me, so I'm going to catch up somewhere.
If you are not that talented, you can beat them with time. You can get to the spot before they get to the spot. Get your butt up and get there.
Every day is a new day. Every moment is a new moment. So now you got to go out and show them that I'm a different creature. Now, because I'm pissed off for greatness. Because if you ain't pissed off for greatness, that means you're okay with being mediocre. There ain't no man in here okay with being just basic.
I dare you to exhaust yourself. I dare you to leave every single thing on the field one season. Everything walk off exhausted.
Wins and losses come a dime a dozen. The effort, nobody can judge effort. Because effort is between you and you. Effort ain't got nothing to do with nobody else.
I want you to know when you dream your dream that there are other people who are dreaming the exact same dream. When you say to yourself, this is what I want to accomplish, you're not the only person that wants to accomplish it. And now I ask you this question: what do you do when 1,000 other people want exactly what you want? What do you do when you're not the only one that wants to make $1 million in your company? You're not the only one that wants to be a CEO. What if you're not the only one that wants what you want? What if there are thousands of other people who want what you want? You have to outwork them. You got to get up earlier. You got to stay up later. You got to execute, and you got to go from 70 to 120.
And that was a little bit of motivation. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, meditation. And that was a little bit of meditation. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now the Daily Stoic.
Revenge is a dish best not served. The best way to avenge yourself is to not be like that. Marcus Aurelius, Meditations 6.6. How much better to heal than seek revenge from injury? Vengeance wastes a lot of time and exposes you to many more injuries than the first that sparked it. Anger always outlasts hurt. Best to take the opposite course. Would anyone think it normal to return a kick to a mule or a bite to a dog? Seneca, on anger, 3.27.2.
And that was the Daily Stoic. And now, His Excellency, Bishop Robert Barron.
40% of the population of adults either believe that Jesus is a mythical character or they're uncertain whether he was a real person. So in other words, nearly half of adults in the UK think that Jesus was either a myth or a legend. What would you say to people who find the Bible interesting, maybe helpful from a psychological perspective, but doubt its historical reliability?
Read the scholars. There's an absolute consensus. Scholars left to right, skeptical to devout, affirming the real historical existence of Jesus. We have some of the best evidence for Jesus of anyone from the ancient world. Do you believe Alexander the Great was a real historical figure? Well, who doubts it? Do you believe Julius Caesar was a real historical figure? Who would doubt it? We have far more historically reliable information about Jesus than either of those two figures. But it's born, Brandon, of a deep prejudice, against religion. So we want to debunk and kind of re-mythologize Jesus. But it's just not faithful at all to the serious scholarship.
And that was His Excellency Bishop Robert Barron. And now, the Ayn Rand thought of the day. Quote, "The spread of evil is the symptom of a vacuum. Whenever evil wins, it is only by default, by the moral failure of those who evade the fact that there can be no compromise on basic principles." Unquote. And that was Ayn Rand from the chapter The Anatomy of Compromise from the book Capitalism, the Unknown Ideal. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, psychopathy.
So last week I did this story where I admitted that I had been self-censoring on some issues for a while on the program. And I explained it's not for reasons of monetization. It has nothing to do with that. It's because there are topics that for my mostly left-wing audience become so toxic and vitriolic that I question the value in general of diving into them. And I talked about how I will, it became very clear that any criticism that I would make of any of the members of the squad, for example, would be met with allegations of racism. So I stopped doing those critiques. Talking about Venezuela in anything but glowing terms would get me just slammed by people on the left in a completely counterproductive way. Mentioning Tulsi Gabbard at all, other than to say she's the best candidate. Apparently that's the only thing that's allowed in some circles. And I also mentioned the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And the reaction to the story itself that I did last week was really positive. People saying they respected me for coming clean, people encouraging me to take on these topics because the reactions should and could be respectful, and I want to engage in the battle of ideas, and it's good for the left to figure out things that we are not united about, all of that stuff. So I did, and yesterday I pointed out that I don't think that the Israeli BDS movement is a force that will unite the left. I don't think it's a force that will cause change in Israel or foreign policy. I don't believe it has been effective. And in addition, I believe that it hurts people. It hurts workers. It hurts small businesses, or at least potentially if it worked, although it hasn't been very effective. And really our gripe is with the right-wing government of Israel. So I did that story yesterday. And the reactions to the segment are now Exhibit A in why I have been avoiding this and other topics on the program. And it has to do with it just being unclear that there's an upside for my sort of audience demographic for dealing with these issues. It is a toxic cesspool of comments. Let's first just start with some comments from the YouTube channel, which we will put up on the screen for you. Some of these have had to be blurred in some areas in order to maintain FCC safety.
And that's good enough. That was the psychopathy corner. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, Stu's back.
Everyone, it is Monday, and the financial headline to start the week is Bitcoin. Several crypto-friendly measures are being considered this week. Investors like it, and Bitcoin has crossed the $120,000 mark for the first time. The current quote, 121.9, way up there. There are tariff headlines, too. The president has slapped a 50% tariff on Brazil. He doesn't like what he calls the witch hunt trial of former President Bolsonaro. Trump has announced 30% tariffs on Mexico and the European Union. They begin August the 1st. The EU delaying its response, hoping to work out a deal before the deadline. And the Treasury posted a surplus for June. $113 billion collected annually. That's 86% more than a year ago. That's from tariffs. Stock market investors not too happy with on-again, off-again uncertainty. Minor losses, though. The Dow down about 150, NASDAQ down about 63 points. Minor losses with the tariff news. Interest rates at elevated levels. The 10-year moving back close to 4.5%. You're at 4.44 right now. The 2-year right around 3.90, right at 3.90. Oil close to $70 a barrel. You're at 68.72. For your summer driving, you'll pay an average of $3.15 for regular, diesel $3.70. All right, on the show today, President Trump is not happy with Vladimir Putin. He's considering new sanctions. The announcement may come today. Meanwhile, the Ukrainians will get American Patriot missile defense systems. The Europeans will pay for them. That's new. President Biden, in an interview with the New York Times, says, he made the clemency decisions which were recorded with the auto pen. He calls Republican critics liars. And President Trump puts America and his presidency in the middle of world soccer. He presented the trophy to Chelsea players after they beat Paris Saint-Germain in the World Club Cup final. The final was played at the MetLife Stadium in New Jersey, where the crowd gave the president a rousing reception. He didn't want to let go of the trophy. Next year, he will present the trophy to the World Cup winners again in New Jersey. It's great to be back. Been away for 1 week, actually. It is Monday, July the 14th. It is Bastille Day. Varney and Company is about to begin.
And that was Stu Varney, Nonprofit News Now. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now the preamble to the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now I want to read this little blurb from Google about Media Buzz. I was watching Media Buzz, and it's on Fox News, and so I was thinking that this is going to be a center-right broadcast, but he was talking about the floods. He cited the New York Times as a source, and that was alarming. So I decided what I was going to do is look him up on Google and see what the Google overview, how they describe his show. So here it is, the overview on Google on Media buzz. Veteran journalist Howard Kurtz is no stranger to criticizing the media. He did it for 20 years as a media columnist for the Washington Post and as a host of CNN's long-running Reliable Sources from 1998 through the first half of 2013. So it's no surprise that shortly after departing CNN in mid-2013 for rival Fox News Channel, he would premiere a show for his new employer that is modeled after his previous program. In addition to Kurtz and his weekly panel discussing how the press covers a variety of topics, include technology, social media, politics, and sports, the host also interviews some of the country's top journalists. So there it is. As far as I can tell, then, what this is a circus or an entertainment program. There's nowhere in the overview that it says that this is about news. Although it's dressed up like it's a news program. Everything that you see visually when you turn the program on indicates that this is going to be news, and it isn't. It is, as it says in here, let's see, commentary, I believe is the word that they're using. Weekly panel discussing, let's see, he was a media columnist, no surprise, he would premiere show, blah, 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 blah. It doesn't say commentary specifically, but that's obviously what is going on. Also, it's obviously left-wing. It's obviously a pro-Democrat program because, again, he was working for the Washington Post and for CNN. And then he comes over to Fox. Why he came over to Fox, other than, I guess, he's getting paid more from Fox and probably knows that CNN is doomed and that it's going to end up being sold or just done away with in its entirety. So, but anyways, that's media buzz, and that's what you can do with any and every show is go onto Google and look them up and find out what the overview is on the show, because you might be surprised. You might think, well, this is a news show, but you look at the overview and it's not described as a news show. It's described as something else. This description is so vague, you can really call it anything you want to, and I call it a circus. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, what does the phrase, if you're explaining you're losing, mean in debates? This was said by Ronald Reagan, speaking of political campaigns. From the perspective of your audience, if you have to explain yourself, you come off looking desperate to convince. As a consequence, you lose the high ground. From a more philosophical perspective, when you have a clear conscience and strong conviction towards the positions you take, your values, truth, and direction, you don't need the opinions or consent of others. As a consequence, you don't need to explain yourself. However, if you yourself are not convinced of the validity and truth of your position, or you can't fully justify your choices, then you continue to expel words in an attempt to create the illusion of certainty. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now Varney and Company, and he's interviewing Dr. Oz, who's the head of the Medicare part of Health and Human Services.
Medicaid Services Administrator, Dr. Mehmet Oz. Doctor, as I understand it, 11 million people would lose their coverage because of the changes to Medicaid. That's going to be a political problem for you, isn't it?
I don't believe that number is correct. In fact, the numbers are often offered by economists who look at numbers, statistics, but this is really a psychology question.
Okay, so two mistakes. Number one is that he didn't handle the statement correctly. He should have denied it. And then the second thing is now he's going to go ahead and start with explanations. And once again, when you start explaining, you lose because you sound desperate. Stuart Varney said to him, quoted him a statistic, 11 million people are going to be without Medicare. He doesn't say, it's an arbitrary claim because he doesn't say where he got the figure. Okay, and they haven't come to terms in terms of what they will accept, what each side will accept in terms of facts, right? Where you're going to get your facts from. This presents Dr. Oz with the opportunity when Stuart Varney says 11 million people are going to be off of Medicaid, is to say, what are you talking about? Where do you get that information? One of those two kinds of questions. Then, when Stuart Varney comes up, if he's able to respond to that, he might just have to babble his way through it. But if he's able to come up with a source for that information, then Dr. Oz can go into the denial mode and say, no, for instance, let's say a study. And Stuart says that, I got it because there's a Harvard study that says that 11 million people are will be coming off of Medicare. And then you have to say, no, it doesn't. See? Dr. Oz then says, no, it doesn't. So the issue then becomes one of producing the proof. The burden of proof is on Stuart Varney, as it should be. Otherwise, the burden of proof now becomes on Dr. Oz. Dr. Oz has to prove that this is a good idea, it's a good plan, whatever plan that they have. I guess plan is for getting able-bodied people to work. And that too many able-bodied people are not working, they're just loafing and taking Medicaid. So now the burden of proof is on him, and he should be putting it back on Stuart Varney. Back in a minute. And now from a book that's called Good Inside. What's the opposite of understanding? For this argument's sake, it's convincing. Convincing is the attempt to prove a singular reality, to prove that only one thing is true. Convincing is an attempt to be right, and as a result make the other person wrong. It rests on the assumption that there's only one correct viewpoint. And then my question is this supposed to be convincing? Further, convincing has one goal in mind, being right. And here's the unfortunate consequence of being right. The other person feels unseen and unheard, at which point most people become infuriated and combative, because it feels as if the other person does not accept your realness or worth. Feeling unseen and unheard makes connection impossible. Understanding two things are true and convincing one thing is true are diametrically opposed ways of approaching other people, so a powerful first step in any interaction is to notice which mode you're in. When you're in one thing is true mode, you're judgmental of and reactive to someone else's experience because it feels like an assault on your own truth. As a result, you will seek to prove your own point of view, which in turn makes the other person defensive because they need to uphold the realness of their experience. In one thing is true mode, exchanges escalate quickly. Each person thinks they're arguing about the content of the conversation, when in fact they're trying to defend that they are a real, worthy person with a real, truthful experience. And again, is this convincing? Back in a minute. Thank you. And now from George Lakoff, Moral Politics.
Chapter 8. The Nature of the Model. The nation as family metaphor. Part of our conceptual systems, whether we are liberals, conservatives, or neither, is a common metaphorical conception of the nation as family, with the government, or head of state representing the government, seen as an older male authority figure, typically a father. We talk about our founding fathers. George Washington was called the father of his country, partly because he was the metaphorical progenitor who brought it into being, and partly because he was seen as the ultimate legitimate head of state, which according to this metaphor is the head of the family, the father. The U.S. government has long been referred to as Uncle Sam. George Orwell's nightmare head of state in 1984 was called Big Brother. This has been consciously echoed in the conservatives' use of big government. When our country goes to war, it sends its sons, and now its daughters, into battle. A patriot, from the Latin pater, father, loves his fatherland. We ask God in song to crown thy good, that is, the good of the nation, with brotherhood. The metaphor even comes up in legislative argument. Senator Robert Dole, in arguing for the balanced budget amendment, chided liberals as thinking that Washington knows best, a slogan based on the cliché, Father knows best, which had also been the title of a popular TV show. Indeed, an argument regularly used for the balanced budget amendment is that just as a family's budget must be balanced, so must a nation's. Any economist, liberal or conservative, knows that there are many crucial differences between a family and a nation that make the analogy economically ludicrous. A family can't initiate economic stimulus programs, print new currency, or increase tax rates. Yet, despite this, the unconscious and automatic nation-as-family metaphor in our conceptual systems make the logic seem to be just common sense to most people. My point is that the nation-as-family metaphor exists as part of our standard conceptual repertoire. I believe it does a lot more conceptual work than just allowing us to make sense of expressions like Uncle Sam or Big Brother, or permit advocates of the balanced budget amendment to get away with conceptualizing the nation as a family in their arguments. I believe that the nation-as-family metaphor is what links conservative and liberal worldviews to the family-based moralities we have been discussing. I believe that this metaphor projects the strict father and nurturant parent moral systems onto politics to form the conservative and liberal political worldviews. A bit more precision. It's time to get a bit more precise about the model proposed. First, the nation-as-family metaphor can be stated as follows. Here, for simplicity, we limit the older authority figure in the family to a parent. The nation is a family. The government is a parent. The citizens are the children. This metaphor allows us to reason about the nation on the basis of what we know about a family. For example, just as a parent functions to protect his or her children, so the government functions to protect its citizens. Certain inferences, importantly, are overridden, as is normal in conceptual metaphors. For example, citizens, for the most part, are adults and so are not treated like children. The government doesn't put you to bed, tell you a bedtime story, and so on. This is predicted by what is called the invariance principle. References A1, Lakoff, 1993. However, the government, like a parent, does have certain responsibilities toward its citizens and authority over them. Notice that this metaphor does not specify exactly what kind of family the nation is. This is where the strict father and nurturant parent models come in. They fill in such information. For conservatives, the nation is conceptualized, implicitly and unconsciously, as a strict father family, and for liberals, as a nurturant parent family. The link between morality and politics arises as follows. The strict father and nurturant parent models of the family induce the two moral systems discussed in chapters 5 and 6. The nation-as-family metaphor, in applying to the family models, also applies to the family-based moral systems, yielding conservative and liberal political worldviews. Described from the ground up, this analysis of conservative and liberal worldviews may seem elaborate, but from the perspective of the structure of conceptual systems, it is actually very simple. Each of the elements in the analysis exists independently. 1. The two models of the family, which are culturally elaborated variants of traditional male and female models, these are rooted in long cultural experience. 2. The various metaphors for morality, in which morality is conceptualized as strength, nurturance, authority, health, and so on. These are grounded in everyday experiential well-being. It's better to be strong rather than weak, cared for rather than not cared for, in control rather than not in control, healthy rather than sick, and so on. 3. The nation as family metaphor. These elements, which exist independently, fit together naturally in certain ways. Each of the family models provides a natural organization of the metaphors for morality, as described in chapters 5 and 6. The result is two opposing moral systems. The nation as family metaphor projects these two moral systems onto the domain of politics, yielding the conservative and liberal worldviews. In short, given the independent existence of the two family models, the metaphors for morality, and the nation as family metaphor, these two political worldviews are the minimal ways of using these conceptual elements to arrive at an approach to politics. The conservative and liberal worldviews are the results of a maximally economic use of existing conceptual resources to make sense of politics. And as we shall see below, variations on liberal and conservative worldviews are minimal variations on these models. But, variations aside for the moment, the two worldviews are each very simply constituted. Each is a binding together of three kinds of independently existing elements. From the perspective of the human brain, this is very simple indeed. Explanation and evidence. The kind of analysis I am presenting is known as cognitive modeling. It is perhaps the most common form of analysis within the cognitive sciences. The idea is to construct a model of how the mind, using natural cognitive apparatus, such as conceptual metaphors and radial categories, makes sense of some significantly wide range of phenomena, especially puzzling phenomena. Plausible models have the kinds of properties that this model has. The most plausible models are those whose elements have an independent motivation and use minimal additional cognitive apparatus. The plausibility of the model rests on the plausibility of other claims. First, that the idealized models of the family presented are really cognitive stereotypes. Second, that the analysis of the metaphors for morality is a plausible one, based on evidence from inference and language. Thus, do we really understand morality as purity, or strength, or nurturance, and how can we tell? Some of that inferential and linguistic evidence was given above in the discussion of the metaphors, and plausible experiential basis for those metaphors were presented in Chapter 3. Third, is it plausible that our conceptual systems have a metaphor for conceptualizing a nation as a family? The considerations at the beginning of this section do seem to justify that conclusion. As conceptual analyses go on in our discipline, this one has a high degree of initial plausibility. That is, it is the kind of model a cognitive linguist would expect to find. The next question is whether the model accounts for the phenomena. These phenomena were discussed in chapters 1 and 2. They are of three kinds. First, the model must explain why conservative and liberal political stands group together as they do. Take, for example, opposition to social programs, anti-environmentalism, anti-feminism, harsh penalties for criminals, and support of the right to own assault weapons. Why do they fit together? Second, the model must explain what puzzles liberals about conservatives, and conservatives about liberals. It must explain why contradictions for one are obvious truths for the other. Third, it must account for the details of conservative and liberal discourse. It must account for how texts fit together and make sense. And it must account for how metaphorical language is used in those texts. Moreover, the model must be predictive. It must account for the modes of reasoning and metaphorical language in new texts, texts not yet produced. It must account for how conservatives and liberals come down on new issues, and it must account for new puzzles that arise. Getting any cognitive model to do all this is a tall order. Very few of those outside the cognitive sciences are used to thinking about social and political issues in terms of the human mind. It is common to think of them in terms of economics or sociology or political philosophy or law or statistical studies that use survey data. To date, none of those accounts, to my knowledge, have been able to make complete sense of the three kinds of phenomena considered here. So far as I have been able to discover, this hypothesis is the only serious attempt to explain all these phenomena together. Since this hypothesis is new, it does not have the degree of confirmation that one would expect of more mature theories. At present, it is based solely on modeling.
on whether the model is plausible and how well it accounts for the 3 types of data discussed. It appears to fit extremely well and to have held up predictively so far. Virtually every talk show and political speech I've listened to since working this out has confirmed the predictions of the model. That, to a cognitive modeler, is very strong empirical confirmation. But anyone would prefer to have additional confirmation from, say, psycholinguistic tests and from survey data if possible. I hope such studies can be undertaken in the future, but they would not be easy or straightforward. Psycholinguistic testing has begun to be able to discern the existence of conceptual metaphors in cognitive models. But no experimental paradigms of the complexity needed to test this hypothesis now exist. See references A1, Gibbs, 1994. Survey research has not yet developed an adequate methodology to test for the presence of complex metaphorical cognitive models such as these. Let us now shift from discussing this analysis in terms of cognitive models, evidence, explanation, and prediction to what it says about people. The analysis claims that we use unconscious cognitive models to comprehend politics, just as we use them in all other areas of our lives. Whenever we instantaneously understand a political speech, we are filling in what is not explicitly said in the speech through the use of these cognitive models. This analysis claims the difference between conservative and liberal worldviews derives from different cognitive models of politics. The most fundamental difference, the analysis claims, the difference from which all other differences spring, is in the use of an idealized, stereotypical model of the family. The conservative model uses a strict father model of the family, while the liberal model uses a nurturant parent model of the family. Both conservative and liberal models then organize and prioritize common conceptual metaphors for morality so as to fit the family model. The resulting family-based moralities are linked to politics by a common nation as family metaphor. The result is 2 very different political worldviews. It is important to note what the analysis does not claim. It does not claim that each person has only one idealized family model. Most of us probably recognize both models and use them differently. We may believe one and mock the other, though to mock it we have to recognize it. Another possibility is that we have both models and use them differently, applying one model to family life and the other to politics. I would not be surprised if many people applied the strict father model to how fathers should act and the nurturant parent model to how mothers should act. They may then have a model of the family with both a strict father and nurturant mother, with a separation of responsibilities and each functioning differently. Where the models contradict each other in family life, as they inevitably do, there are many choices for resolution. Perhaps the father's model takes precedence, perhaps the mother's does. Perhaps it is argued out on a case-by-case basis, or perhaps it just depends on who has the most energy that day. Now, such a family, with different people using 2 distinct idealized family models, cannot be the basis for a coherent politics. To arrive at a coherent political worldview via the nation as family metaphor, one of the family models must be chosen, in the way the analysis indicates. Of course, as I mentioned in Chapter 1, people do not necessarily have a single, coherent worldview based on a single model. For example, from 1968 to 1992, with the exception of the Carter presidency, the voters selected a fairly conservative president and a fairly liberal Congress, creating what might be seen as a strict father executive and a nurturant mother Congress, thus reproducing a classic family model in the government, with strictness at the top and caring right below. Thus, the analysis does not claim that there is always, or even mostly, any simple one-to-one correlation between family models and political worldviews. But I suspect that such one-to-one correlations do exist. A conceptual system with such a one-to-one correspondence between family and politics would be simpler, more unified and more stable, or more rigid, and produce less cognitive dissonance than a system that uses different models at different times on different issues. The conservative focus on family values can be seen from this perspective as an attempt to unify the use of the strict father model for family life with its use as a basis for conservative politics. From the perspective of cognitive science, this is an extremely sophisticated and powerful political strategy. It is time to move on from the general to the particular. Whatever technical or scientific merits this proposal may or may not have, its ultimate value to us as citizens is whether it gives us real insight into our politics, which is what the next chapters are about. I will begin by showing first in Chapter 9 how these two moral systems create different categories of moral actions, of model citizens, and of demons. Then I will move on in Chapter 10 to answer the questions we started with.
And that was Chapter 8 of Moral Politics, How Liberals and Conservatives Think by Dr. George Lakoff. And again, throughout the book, you're going to notice that he approaches this from a neutral standpoint. He's a liberal, there's no doubt about it, and he's speaking to liberals. Also, no doubt about it, that's obvious. But he doesn't come out and say conservatism is wrong. He doesn't come out and say that liberalism is right. He uses the word model so that he can say that basically everything is the same. Nothing's inherently good or bad. Everything is basically the same. The only difference between things is popularity. And so here, with liberalism and conservatism, the only difference between the two is popularity, especially as to the models. The conservatism runs on a particular model, liberalism runs on another particular model, and so really the only difference between the two will be popularity. So you'll notice that throughout the book, but this is a great insight into how liberals think. Back in a minute. Thank you. This is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States today, bidding adios to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there, and reminding you that greed is not conservative.